Okay, good evening, good evening. Welcome to another Call Family Worship where we are reading from this book, Westminster Larger Catechism. It's a commentary by Johannes Voss. Today is the first Lord's Day of April 2023. So for today, we'll be reading question 130 and 131. This is part of chapter 13, God's will expressed in our duty to others. So I'll be asking my son Kevin to read for us question 130 and Kyler to read for us question 131.
Question: What are the sins of superiors? Answer: the sins of superiors is that the neglect of the duties required of them, and in order not seeking of themselves their own glory, ease, profit, or pleasure, commanding things unlawful, are not in the power of their inferiors to perform, counseling, encouraging, or favoring them in that which is evil, dissuading, discouraging, or discountenancing them in that which is good, correcting them unduly, careless, exposing or leaving them to wrong temptation and danger, provoking them to wrath or any way dishonoring themselves or lessening their authority by an unjust, indiscreet, rigorous, or rebellious behavior.
What are the duties of equals? Answer: the duties of equals are to regard the dignity and worth of each other, giving honor to one for another, and to rejoice in each other's gifts and backhand as their own.
Okay, we are still in the topic of the fifth commandment. Honor thy mother and thy father. So, in question 130, it asks, what are the sins of superiors? The sins of superiors are, besides the neglect of duties required of them, an inordinate seeking of themselves, their own glory, ease, profit, or pleasure, commanding things unlawful and not in the power of their inferiors to perform, counseling, encouraging, or favoring them in that which is evil, dissuading, discouraging, or discountenancing them in that which is good, correcting them unduly, careless exposing, or leaving them to wrong, temptation, and danger, provoking them to wrath, or any way dishonoring themselves or lessening to their authority by an unjust, indiscreet, rigorous, or remiss behavior. Ezekiel 34 verses 2 to 4 tells us sinful neglect of duty toward those under their authority on the part of the superiors. Philippians 2:21, John 5:44, John 7:18, Isaiah 56:10 to 11, Deuteronomy 17:17 tells us the sin of selfish attitudes or conduct on the part of superiors. Daniel 3:4 to 6, Acts 4:17 to 18, Exodus 5:10 to 18, Matthew 23:2, and Matthew 23:4 tells us the sin of persons in authority commanding things that are unlawful and that are not in the power of the authority under their authority to perform. Matthew 14:8 compared with Mark 6:24, 2 Samuel 13:28, 1 Samuel 3:13 tells us the sins of counseling, encouraging, or favor inferiors in doing what is wrong. John 7:46 to 49, Colossians 3:21, Exodus 5:17 tells us the sin of influencing inferiors against what is good and right. 1 Peter 2:18-20, Hebrews 12:10, Deuteronomy 25:3 tells us of the excessive or immoderate correction of inferiors, even when they are at fault, is wrong. Genesis 37:28, Genesis 13:12-13, Acts 18:17 tells us the sin of careless exposing of inferiors to wrong, temptation, or danger. Ephesians 6:4, the sin of provoking inferiors to wrath by unreasonable demands or requirements. Genesis 9:21, 1 Kings 12:13-16, 1 Kings 1:6, 1 Samuel 2:29-31 tells us the sinfulness of all conduct which results in the breaking down of respect of authority on the part of inferiors. Why is neglect of duties required of superiors sinful on their part? Because such neglect arises from failure. It's a failure to recognize or to take seriously the God-given responsibility which accompanies the authority committed to them. To exercise authority without recognizing and accepting the corresponding responsibility is to act irresponsibly and is always sinful. James 4:17. What wrong attitude of heart and mind is the cause of much wrongdoing on the part of a person's in authority? Selfishness, which if not checked and controlled inevitably leads to unjust exploitation of persons under authority of others. Persons who are in possession of authority should realize that this authority has not been committed to them of their own selfish employment, that they have a real duty to those under their authority, and that they are themselves under the moral government of God and must give account to Him for their exercise of authority in every case. All selfish use of authority is abuse of authority and therefore sinful. Give some examples from the Bible of rulers who commanded their authority under their authority to do contrary to the law of God. Number one is Nebuchadnezzar. He commanded that all people worship great golden image in Daniel 3:1-7. Darius decree forbidding prayer to any god or man for 30 days except to himself. Daniel 6:4-9. Amaziah's command to Amos not to prophesy in Bethel. Amos 7:10-13. Zedekiah's forbidding Jeremiah to prophesy in the name of the Lord. Jeremiah 32:1-5. Jewish Sanhedrin command to the apostles not to preach in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Acts 4:17-18, Acts 5:28, and Acts 5:40. Give some examples from the history of the church of rulers who commanded actions contrary to the law of God. The Roman emperor who persecuted the early Christians, requiring them to render divine honor to the emperor's image. The ruler of Scotland who required the people to renounce the national covenant, solemn league, and covenant to recognize the king as the head of the church. The Japanese government, before the national defeat that required citizens, including Christians, in Japan, Korea, Manchuria, to bow before the Shinto shrines, thus honoring the sun goddess as a pledge of civil allegiance to the state. Remember in Japan, the
Yes.
Shinto religion? Give some examples from the Bible of rulers who demanded of their subjects their impossible for the latter to perform. The Egyptians' taskmasters who, in accordance with their orders of Pharaoh, demanded the people of Israel make bricks without straw being provided for them. Exodus 5:10-18. Nebuchadnezzar's demand that his magicians declare his forgotten dream together with the interpretation. Daniel 2 verses 1-13. Why is it specifically wrong for superiors to influence those under their authority in favor of what is wrong or against what is right? This is especially wrong and wicked because of the ordinary influence which one person exerts upon another. There is added the weight of superior authority. It is always wrong to influence another in favor of what is wrong or against what is right. But when the weight of special authority is added to such influence, the evil is greatly aggravated. Thus, for a government official to encourage private citizen in violating the law or to discourage them in efforts to obey in the honor of the law is much more wicked than for a private person to exert some influence. For a parent to encourage child to tell lies or to ridicule child's effort at honesty, for example, is much worse than for one child's playmate to do the same thing. Similarly, for a minister or other church officers to encourage church members to indulge in sinful conduct or to discourage members who are trying to live a holy and consistent life is much worse than for a private member of the church to do the same. In the matter of influence on others, as in other matters, greater authority means added responsibility. Why is undue, excessive, or immoderate correction of inferiors wrong? This is wrong because it is unjust, being out of proportion of the offense or wrongdoing in the case. It is wrong because it counteracts and destroys the proper effect of correction by producing a feeling of injustice and resentment in the person corrected instead of leading the person to reformation of conduct. Why is careless exposing of inferiors to wrong, temptation, and danger sinful? Every person has a moral responsibility to his neighbor's welfare. But in the case of the persons in position of authority, this responsibility of the welfare for those under their authority is greatly increased. Careless, heedless, or indifferent exposing of such persons to injustice or to moral, spiritual, or physical danger involves a gross disregard and neglect of God-given responsibility for the welfare of those under their authority. Give some Bible examples of careless exposing of inferiors, of wrong, temptation, and danger. Lot, who moved nearer and nearer to the wicked city of Sodom, and finally established his residence within the city, regardless of the moral danger to his family. Genesis 13:12-13. Joseph's brother who sold him into Egypt, thus not only treating him extremely unjustly, but abandoning him to an environment where he would face the temptation to idolatry and immorality. Genesis 37:26 to 28. Ahab, who married the Baal worshipping Zidonian princess Jezebel, thus exposing the whole nation to injustice, a bad example, and the temptation to compromise with idolatry. 1 Kings 16:29 to 33. What is meant by provoking inferiors to wrath? This expression, which is derived from Ephesians 6:4, refers to an unreasonable requirements beyond what could properly be expected under the circumstances, or to a harsh, unloving, and unduly critical attitude in connection with the requirements which are reasonable and proper in themselves. Extreme strictness about minor matters, expecting children to perform a task as perfectly as adults, threatening punishment out of proportion to the seriousness of the offense, are examples of unreasonableness on the part of the parent or other persons in authority. Such unreasonableness will naturally have effect of provoking the person under the authority to the wrath and discouragement. Give a Bible example of a person who dishonored himself and lessened his authority by an unjust, indiscreet, rigorous, or remiss behavior. Nabal, whose very name means foolish or wicked, 1 Samuel 25:25, who although descended from a very godly man, 1 Samuel 25:3, possessed of great wealth and had a large household, yet was churlish and evil in his doings, was extremely unreasonable toward David's followers, and had reputation among his own servants of being son of Belial, that a man cannot speak to him. Verse 17. Nabal's unreasonableness, ill temper, intemperance, verse 17, and general folly so undermined his authority and dishonored his own person that even his wife could only call him this man of Belial.
Belial.
Hmm?
My teacher in Bible when I was Belial. My teacher in Bible.
Yeah.
Belial.
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 Yes.
And admit that folly is with him. Verse 25. So question 131, what are the duties of equals? The duties of equals are regard the dignity and worth of each other in giving honor to go one before the other, and to rejoice with each other's gifts and advancement as their own. 1 Peter 2:17, our duty to respect and love our own fellow men. Romans 12:10, the duty of Christian love and mutual regard. Romans 12:15 to 16, Philippians 2:3 to 4. We are to find joy and satisfaction in honor and advancement that come to others as well as to ourselves. What does the Catechism mean by the word equals? This does not refer to equality of nature, but to equality of possession. The person may be equal in nature, but unequal in possession. A parent and a child are equal in nature, but one is in possession of authority over the other. In human society, it is inevitable that some persons be equal in authority. This inequality of possession is God's ordinance. What do we mean by persons being equal in authority? They are of the same level of authority, neither possessing authority over the other. For example, in an army, while a general has authority over a private, two privates are equal. What is our general duty toward those who are our equals in human society? We are regard their dignity and worth, realizing that like ourselves, they are human persons created in the image of God and therefore to be honored, respected because we fear God. What special sins must be avoided if we are to treat our equals with due honor and respect? To treat our equals with due honor and respect, we must especially avoid the sins of selfishness and pride. Everyone by nature tends to think too highly of himself. We tend to magnify our own attainments and to minimize those of others. We tend to blame others for their faults and failures, while we find plausible excuses for our own. All these comes from sinful human selfishness and pride. Only by the grace of God in our lives can these sins be overcome. What special duty is involved in the command of Romans 12:15-16? The duty of Christian sympathy, that is, being concerned about the affairs and welfare of our neighbors according to the particular circumstances and needs. We are to rejoice with those who rejoice and to weep with those who weep. That is, we are to share in sympathy with the experience of others. Why should we rejoice in the attainments of gifts and gifts as much as our own? Because God is glorified by these attainments and gifts, regardless of whether they are our own or some other person's. We should regard everything in life not from selfish standpoint, but from the standpoint of God's glory. What special sins tend to prevent our rejoicing in other people's gifts and advancement? The sin of envy, which causes us actually to be unhappy to over the success attained or honors received by someone else. True Christian love and sympathy for others will overcome the sin of envy in our lives. So we will be happy with the successes of others, because God is glorified for us not being envious about their successes. We will end here for today, for this Lord's Day. Lord willing, we will be reading the continuation, question 132 onwards. So let us all stand as we ask Kyler to close us in a word of prayer.
Okay, so our is your father and your action is mistake when you do rules amendment. Sorry for our sins. Please forgive us and change us. Please let us not be rebellious. Thank you for everything us. Thank you for so week where you it for us and thank you. Catechism today. Please help us not to get sick. Please or like a live or a sore throat. In Jesus' name, amen.
Yay.